Good morning and welcome to our In Conversation with Tom Hind from Stellar Asset Management. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Mark Abley, Managing Director at Fathom Financial. Fathom is an independent financial advisor firm based in Spennymoor, County Durham. Today, in this podcast, we're going to talk to Tom about Stellar Asset Management, an award-winning inheritance tax and estate planning specialist. Tom's going to tell us who Stellar are, what they do, and give us an overview of some of the products and services that Stellar provide. So good morning, Tom, and welcome.
Good morning, Mark. Thanks very much for having me on. How you doing?
I'm very well, thank you, and I hope the weather's as good for you as it is for us up here.
It is. I've unfortunately sat next to a lot of windows. I feel like I'm in a greenhouse, but yeah, I can't complain.
Yeah, well, we're not complaining because the sun's out and it's not raining and it's not cold, so there we go. So without further ado, Tom, just who are Stellar Asset Management and what do they do?
Yes, so we are a tax efficient investment manager. So we provide a suite of services to our clients and advisors, which enables them to mitigate inheritance tax liability. So it sits alongside lots of different kind of traditional routes to IHT planning and provides an option for clients to retain control over their assets and do their IHT planning. We were set up in 2007. We're very much an owner-managed firm, so our CEO, managing director, chairman, business development director, all got shares in the business, very much sort of skin in the game. So quite a nice kind of family feel to the business, which is nice. We've got a London office, which is kind of our head office. And then we've got a Liverpool office as well. So we've kind of expanded into the north fairly recently. Yeah.
Good. And what's your role at Stellar?
My role or my title is Senior Business Development Manager, which sounds very flashy, but effectively what that is working with financial advisors like yourselves, with other financial intermediaries, so accountants, solicitors, private client lawyers, anyone really which helps clients to mitigate their IHT liabilities. So my role is really around working with those intermediaries to make sure they're fully aware of all the different tools and structures that Stellar can provide, and then create really nice, personalised and flexible IHT plans for their clients.
Excellent. So, Tom, there are a number of providers in this space. So what would you say are the three things that make Stellar stand out from the crowd?
Ooh, good question. I think the three main things that should make us stand out, when I talk to advisors, I usually focus on these three main things. It's all around choice in terms of the choice of services that we offer. Diversification, so we offer a very, very wide range of underlying assets, so lots of choices again for clients to invest into different sectors that they might not be able to elsewhere, and also accessibility, so all of our services are available on lots of different platforms, which makes it a lot easier for people to access our services in the way that suits them best, really.
Okay, great. So Stellar obviously has a long history and a great deal of experience in this area. So, things must have changed over time, though, Tom, from a planning perspective.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose, for me personally, I've been working in the industry for about 4 years now. I think what I've seen in the changes over the last 4 years is a lot more interest coming to the market. I think that's been exacerbated by COVID. But if you go back to kind of when the business relief market really started to kick off in the kind of late 1990s, early 2000s, the business relief market was pretty much focused on what used to be called deathbed planning, which is a not particularly nice term. But what that effectively means is that clients would use business relief to qualify for relief from IHT by using that 2-year qualification period. So for those that aren't aware, some of the main benefits of business relief is enabling clients to mitigate IHT liabilities in just 2 years. So usually it takes about 7 years if you're using a trust or gift. Business relief is just 2. So lots of clients or advisors, when they had clients in their 80s or 90s and they didn't have really good comprehensive IHT plans in place, they would look at business relief as a kind of an emergency planning tool to get the IHT planning done. I think actually since then the market's evolved massively, and what you see now is a lot more focus on this aspect of control. So one of the other main benefits away from the 2-year qualification, so the speed, is the fact that investors can retain control over their assets when they're doing IHT planning. And what we see now is that more and more people are aware of that, and they're also aware of the fact that the legislation applies to such a wide range of underlying sectors and structures that more and more clients can benefit from it. So I think it's becoming more and more mainstream as years go on.
Okay, you mentioned there, Tom, COVID, and has the pandemic had any impact on the estate planning market?
Yeah, definitely. I suppose for us as a business, we managed to adapt very quickly. So, we moved on to Skype like we're doing today, or Teams, or Zoom, or anything like that. I'd love to see how many hours I've spent on those platforms. But yeah, I think what we've been able to do is adapt very well to the pandemic. Lots of advisors have been doing, their yearly or annually reviews with clients on that sort of platform as well. So I think technology is very, very much here to stay. I think in terms of interest into the business relief market, personally, from my side, I've seen a lot of my advisors get in touch with more clients that are keen to get interested in this market, keen to get involved in this market. Again, going back on that element of control, I think, one of the issues with the pandemic is that clients still had their IHT liabilities sat there. And actually, as the pandemic went on, clients weren't getting any younger. So that IHT problem was something that they really needed to sort out and not sort of kick down the road. But one of the main things clients didn't want to do is to relinquish that element of control over their assets and start to put things into trust or give them to beneficiaries prematurely. So what business relief does is provide a really nice solution there where clients can retain full control over their assets. So if things were to change and we were to go into another lockdown or anything was to happen and a loved one had to go into long-term care, for example, those assets are still very much in your control, but also you get that IHT planning done as well.
Great. So let's touch on the legislation, Tom. So business relief, what is it and how does it work?
Yes, definitely a good point to cover, I'm sure. Business relief was introduced in the 1976 Finance Act. So business relief was introduced to enable family-owned businesses to be passed down basically to the next generation without having to pay 40% IHT on those business assets. So, not having to sell company assets or take a big chunk out of the business bank account to go and pay an IHT liability. The government at the time wanted to encourage entrepreneurship in the market, and so introduced business relief to enable businesses to pass down free of the IHT. What we've actually seen is that market's evolved massively now to move into the kind of private investor retail space, where clients can take advantage of the fact that legislation applies to such a wide range of underlying investment sectors that actually it can benefit lots of different clients as well. I think from the government perspective, it's been brilliant because it enables lots of private investment into sectors which are probably underfunded in the UK. So we do a lot of investments into the renewable energy sector and the UK farming sector, which obviously after Brexit and things like that, moving into those sort of areas where private investors can provide the funding has been a really good sort of relationship, I suppose, for the government in terms of funding assets, but also providing relief from IHT.
Okay, makes sense. So how does it compare to the more traditional sort of routes to estate planning?
Yeah, so I suppose there's probably three key traditional routes that kind of spring to mind, and jump in if I've missed any, but it's probably gifting, probably insurance, and probably trusts. So just starting on insurance, I think there's lots of benefits to insurance products. There's no capital risk in there. You're not having any investment risk in there. Potentially drawbacks are it's medically underwritten. So for those clients that have got underlying health conditions, potentially can become a very, very expensive way of getting your IHT liability covered. If we move on to gifts and trusting, the main problems with those are those loss of element of control and also the speed at which it happens. So if you're putting assets into a trust or gifting them to loved ones prematurely, some of the benefits of gifting are that you might be able to see your loved ones enjoy those assets in their lifetime, go and buy a house or pay off their mortgage or go on a nice holiday. But the problem there is that you as the investor or the client loses control over those assets, and you have to wait 7 years for them to be fully IHT under the potentially exempt transfer rules. Where business relief comes in is it enables clients to retain control over those assets and also the speed at which you can qualify for the IHT relief. So it's the control and the 2-year qualification that really make it stand out against those kind of more deemed traditional planning routes.
Excellent. Sounds to me like it's a bit of a have your cake and eat it, this business relief. There must be some drawbacks, Tom.
Yeah, always drawbacks. And I think the main one for business relief is the investment risk side. One of the beauties of gifting and trusts and insurance is that you're not actually putting any of your capital at risk. And that's because there's other disadvantages in there which are covered off. I think the main disadvantage of BR is that element of risk, and it's got to be suitable to your client. They've got to be aware that there is capital at risk. And the reason there is capital at risk is because there's a very, very good benefit out the other side. The government want you to take that risk in order to get the rewards out of it. I think on the risk side, there's lots of ways we can mitigate that really with diversification of asset classes, or going into asset classes which have a slightly lower volatility than some of our other areas. So it's all around talking to your advisor, making them aware of your objectives, make sure the advisor's aware of your kind of risk appetite, and then seeing if business relief is a good fit, or incorporating it alongside a variety of other planning routes to give you an overall kind of balanced portfolio as well, which I think is a good way of doing things.
Okay, great. Let's just touch on products, Tom. So what does Stella's proposition look like?
Yeah, so I think you can kind of separate Stella's proposition into two camps. You've got investments into equities, so investment into qualifying companies that are listed on the alternative investment market, which is a junior stock market like the FTSE 100 or the FTSE 250. And that is a junior market. So the government have enabled business relief to apply there to encourage investors to get involved in slightly smaller companies. They're not small companies or not tiny companies at all. There's a lot of familiar names on there. So companies like ASOS and Fever-Tree and Young's Brewery and James Housestead, all companies that I'm sure clients watching have probably heard of. So investing into those companies is one way of doing it. The other way is investing into non-equities, so investing into UK-based physical assets, largely backed by property. So that might be things like golf courses or hotels or renewable energy projects like wind farms, onshore and offshore, forestry plantations and farming, commercial residential development. There's a really, really broad scope of sectors which apply there.
Great. So I asked earlier the three things that made Stella stand out from the crowd. It seems that there's a great deal of flexibility in a wide range of solutions. Would you say it's this individual bespoke approach that's the main differentiator?
Definitely. And I think from conversation I've had with advisors over the last sort of couple of years of doing this, that's one of the main reasons why Stella have stood out as well. From our proposition, it's around offering the advisor and also the client choice in terms of how they want their IHT plan to look. So, if they want to hold equities, they can do. If they want to hold asset-backed investments, they can do. If they want to take an income, they can. If they want to just target growth, if they're a private investor or a family that want to earmark individual assets, they can. If they're a business owner, there's options for them as well. So, it's all around being able to be flexible and personalized with your plan.
Great. Tom, there's lots of case studies on your website. Do you have any recent examples where you can sort of show that you've helped people?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one of the main things of BR is that, or business relief, is it applies to so many different scenarios. There's lots of case studies that kind of spring to mind. I think, obviously we've just had the tax year end. So one of the main things that was happening over the last few weeks is clients using their ISA allowances. So one of the issues with ISAs, although they're very tax efficient in your lifetime, they are fully liable to IHT on death. So what we can actually do is invest through your ISA into an AIM listed portfolio, which enables you to have those ISA benefits in your lifetime. So income tax, capital gains tax free, but also when you pass away, there's not going to be an IHT charge. You can leave as much as your hard earned cash down to your loved ones. I think there's also a massive market for ISA transfers. So staying on that theme of ISAs, when clients have been doing their 20,000 annual allowance for 10, 15, 20 years or more, lots of clients have got quite significant holdings in ISA portfolios. So switching those into a familiar environment, because it's still equities, but into a certain area that qualifies for their IHT relief is a very popular one. And then on the asset-backed side, we work with lots of businesses with excess cash, so at risk of losing their trading status as a business, or business owners that are preparing to sell or recently have sold and want to roll over the proceeds, or for individuals and families that have got lots of beneficiaries. So one of the main things that we can do with one of our services called Stellar Growth is use different private trading companies to earmark individual assets for different parts of the family, which is really effective. So one client I worked with in February time, they had 3 sons. So we set up 3 different companies for each of their sons, put a certain amount of money into each of those companies. And when mum and dad pass away, those sons will inherit that structure as opposed to a lump sum of cash. And what we're talking about there really is kind of intergenerational family planning as opposed to a one-off kind of IHT plan.
Yeah, well, that seems to make sense. Tom, that's been fantastic. Thanks for sharing with us today your knowledge and expertise. I'm sure everyone who's tuned in has found it very, very useful. I certainly think that business relief is a valuable planning tool, especially for those who wish to keep control of their assets. I think that's the key message, and plan to mitigate inheritance tax. I think that's one of the real benefits of using business relief. I think that you've clearly demonstrated that there are a range of options and solutions which can be put together to suit a wide range of clients with different needs, which is really, really good. From making, ISAs super tax efficient, which is fantastic, not only saving income tax, capital gains tax, but using the business relief to mitigate inheritance tax. I mean, that's just fantastic, Clearly there are some risks, but it sounds as neat to have any cake and eat in it as I've ever seen in my time in financial planning. And equally, any businesses that are holding excess cash, they should take some advice and ensure that they secure their business relief.
Definitely.
So once again, Tom, thanks very much. Perhaps in the future we can delve more into the investment sectors and explore how they work and potentially talk about some of the risks involved and the potential returns that can be achieved.
Yeah,
no guarantees, of course. But thanks to everyone for joining us. I hope that you found our In Conversation with podcast useful. Our next podcast is part of our Let's Talk About series, where we'll be discussing pensions and divorce. So watch this space for your invite. In the meantime, if you'd like any further information about Stellar Asset Management or Business Relief, please give us a call on the usual number, 0800 043 8341, or email letstalk@fathomfinancial.co.uk. Tom, once again, thank you very much indeed. Much appreciated.
All right, thanks for having me.
Thank you, everyone, and goodbye for now.